So this video is basically a video that I want to send to a particular investor client that we have. They're new to us, and sometimes I like to do a video rather than trying to text or type an email out or even a phone call. Sometimes, you know, that getting something across without having anything said back can be enlightening to some people. Plus, I've never met them. This is somebody who lives far away in a faraway land that's snowy. So the idea here is this. This investor had bought some properties in Jacksonville, which is where we're at. And they've bought properties probably other places. But in Jacksonville in particular, every city has its own kind of rental markets and things and its own kind of properties. And there's some people that are good at this kind of property, some people are good at this kind of property. And the properties that this certain investor bought they're not that great property. I mean, they're really old. They're all apartments that were built. I think most of them were built back in the 50s, maybe in that era. And a couple of them they've been redone over the years, of course, and not everybody, when they rebuild an apartment complex to rent out things, and these are all fourplexes, by the way. And not everybody that pays to have this work done is as good as somebody else, right? And a lot of times they hire these contractors to do the work, and they expect the contractor to do one thing and he does something completely different. And that often happens because the person, paying the bills doesn't want to pay all the bills. And so that contractor will say, they'll give them an estimate, and then that person will say, well, I can do it for that, but it's not going to be all that great. And the guy says, well, I just need to get one up online. I spend a lot of money. I just get them up online. And that happens a lot of times. In this case, these quadruplexes that are around, they're pretty old, and some of them are in not great shape. And so when you buy something like that, you have to understand that there's going to be this period of trying to bring them up. And the person that he bought it from, that this company bought him from, there was an individual that had him. He had a company, but it was pretty much an individual. They had bought them sight unseen, and they were working through some of the problems and stuff, and then they decided that they wanted to move on from them, so they sold them. And now this group has them, and they're going to have to continue to work through this. Now, in general, the hope here is that these properties will react fast to the type of work that's being done to them. And when I say that they're obviously, well, not obviously, but in some cases, there's a mortgage to be paid. So they'll finance the entire amount, they'll put money down, finance the rest of what it takes to get into these buildings, and then they have a payment every month. Now, of course, everybody who knows that's in the real estate business, and a lot of the things I talk about, by the way, are dumbed down because I don't know who's going to watch the video, so I kind of have to pretend like that most people don't understand what I'm trying to say. So if the only way you make money in the real estate business, investing in it, is to outrun your cost of keeping them up. So you have so much money coming in, you spend so much money keeping them up, and whatever's left over, that's what you put in the piggy bank. And a lot of times when you buy properties like this, it's just, you're going to spend, and it can be scary sometimes. I know how it can be. When I first started in real estate, that's one of the first things I did when I personally started investing, is I bought the least expensive properties possible, so I could buy more of them. I thought, well, if you have one property at $1,600 and you pay whatever for it, or for the same money, I could have 4 properties paying $800, which is $2,400 a month for the same amount of money. Well, that makes more sense. The problem is, in the one property at $1,600, you have one family bidding on it, and they're bidding on one property. So there's one set of pipes, one set of electricity, one roof. You get the idea. Whereas when you have 4 properties with 4 people bidding on, 4 sets of families bidding on them, you have 4 sets of plumbing, 4 sets of electrical, 4 sets of roofs, 4 sets of 4 sets of 4 sets of. And because they were so inexpensive, they're typically older, more beat up already when you get them. So therein lies the problem. If you buy the more expensive one, right, and you say, okay, well, there's less money to put in it, but it's really expensive. Do I have enough to buy that? And maybe you don't. Maybe you have enough to buy the other cheaper ones because you're only buying 2 instead of 4 to match the 16 as we just talked about. But it all comes back in the end. You know, you have to understand that there is no shortcut to making money in real estate. It's a brutal, tough business, and you got to march through it. And people have known my successes. I've had a lot of successes in business and in real estate. I'm not a broker. I just play one on TV. Just kidding. But I'm not a broker or agent. I own the company. Vicki is the broker of the company. She does the daily hard work. I get involved here and there when things flare up that need a little more, a little more aggressive attention, which is really what I kind of bring to the table. But the message I'm trying to send out to this specific company, the specific individual of this company is, don't lose hope. I mean, there is a corner to be turned. There's still a lot of money to be spent in these buildings. I'm not even going to kid you. There's still a lot of money to be spent in these buildings. The last few months they've been getting killed. There's been cost after cost after cost, and we have some costs now that are coming up, and some that are expected to come up. But I do want to say this about property management, and about in particular Lynn Realty and Management's version of property management. Lynn Realty is not going to put itself into a position where I'm having to answer the microphone, is what I like to say. And that is, you do something to where somebody calls somebody who knows somebody at the news station. Next thing you know, you're answering to the microphone. Mr. Lynn, did this happen? Why did you do so-and-so? So there are some things that come up in these properties that you can say, okay, I'm going to put this off. This doesn't have to be done now. They tell me that the paint on the outside of the building's faded. Let's get to that later. We'll pressure wash it, whatever. There's those type of things. But by and large, the people that live in these places, they're not talking about that. They're not calling us and texting us and putting maintenance requests into the portal. It's, I don't have any hot water anymore, or the toilet doesn't flush, or the bathroom sink is leaking, or there's water coming under the wall where the bathtub is at, or the refrigerator's melting on my food is just going bad because the refrigerator doesn't get cold enough. There's water leaking in, the windows don't close, I've got rats coming in through the ceiling, I've got a crack in the ceiling, I've got a crack in the wall, bugs in there, roaches in there, all these different things that come up in old structures. And you cannot tell them, I'm sorry, we're going to have to wait on that. You're going to have to go a few days, you have to go a week or so without hot water. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry you have rats that are coming in because the soffits are torn up and broken open and the rats are getting in that way. You'll just have to hold off on that. Because what happens is in most cities, there's something called code enforcement. And there's a health department for sure. And a lot of these things, those people will call up in code enforcement and say, hey, I've got rats coming in here and I've noticed the soffits outside are just rotted out. The rats are getting in through there. Or I've got a rat in my house that popped in through the hole in the wall, and hey, when I turn on the light switch in the bedroom, the lights go dim in the other room, and all sorts of different things. I flush my toilet, I can't turn on my water for 10 minutes. All sorts of things. I pay a water bill. This is something that really happened recently. I pay a water bill, and my water bill was $400 a month. You gotta go fix that stuff. So for any investors out there that are thinking about buying properties, and they're older properties, and if you really want to know a property, don't ask about the rent rolls. That's probably the number one mistake that people do. They basically want to know, how much do you bring in a month in rent? How much is the rent? How much money can I put in my two fists and then deposit in the bank? These renters are going to pay me. And they get caught up in that. And then somebody tells them, well, you probably have $20,000 a month coming in rent. Yes! That's a lot of money. It is a lot of money, $20,000 a month. But what you really should be asking for, can I see the repair and maintenance invoices for the past 3 months? Because then you find that $60,000, there was $59,000 of that went out again for repairs. So after 3 months, at $20,000 a month, they had $1,000 to show for it. So, and then their mortgage is going to well outrun that, right? So always ask for the repair statements. Like we use Works Rental Fix, which is a kind of a one-stop shop. It makes things a lot better for, not only does it make better for the property manager, but it actually makes it better for the property owner as well, because you can actually get a big discount on these repairs by using one source. If they refuse to give you that information, I'm not sure that's a good place to buy. maybe they don't want to know anything. Maybe they don't want you to know about that. And if they do tell you, if they do say, okay, well, this is how much I spent in repairs, ask them if you can see, and again, you're going to spend a lot of money buying property from them. They should, give you this information, but ask them to see those invoices. The reason you want to see the invoices is a lot of times at the bottom, these companies will make notes. Hey, we fixed this, but this is going to go bad. Or hey, we fixed this and this might go bad. Or hey, we noticed while we were there fixing this that, man, is this going to be a lot of trouble down the range. Sometimes those notes are there. So there's a lot of things you can do to safeguard before you buy. But then certainly after you buy, you're going to have to put the money into it. You're going to have to put the money into it or just resell the properties. That's basically what you do. And I'll tell you, the properties in particular that we're talking about, they have their problems. And we've been trying to work with Works Rental Fix and, slow roll some of the stuff that we can push back so that it doesn't feel as impactful. But I'll be honest with you, most of the stuff that we've been dealing with has been, the hit in your face kind of thing that you got to get it done now or you're going to have to deal with a microphone. And as I said before, we're not dealing with microphones. I don't like microphones unless they're my microphone. I don't want somebody else's microphone in my face asking me questions about why I didn't. And then there's the moral question. These people that live in these places are, for the most part, they're hardworking folks. They have jobs and stuff. They just don't make a lot of money. And some of them have prior evictions and things that they just have to kind of, unfortunately, take what they get a lot of times. I have a term I use for different apartments and different places. I think it's been on one of my videos. I've called them desperation destinations. And if you're an investor out there and you're going to buy apartments and they're going to be in areas that you need to do your research on the area, get to know who your tenants are, what the area looks like. Is there going to be a lot of problems? How old are the buildings? But then don't put all your money up front in down payment and not have anything left in the background in order to make sure these repairs happen so that you struggle to make the mortgage payment on this thing. You really got to figure, and in these properties that were particular properties, there could be another 4 or 5 months of stuff that's hanging out there, or it could just shore up, be okay from what's been done now. We're hoping that it will be that way. We're hoping that the last few of 3 or 4 or 5 months, well, same thing will happen that happened back in 2022 and early 23, leading up to the spring and summer of 23, or 24 rather, which was good. So it kind of seems to come in cycles. In this particular property, at the end of 23, on into the first part of 24, it was rough. I mean, it seemed like everything was going bad. We had to have one of the buildings roof covered, tarp and stuff, and there was a lawsuit over the roofing when the thing was bought, and it was just a mess. There was an enormous amount of evictions in the beginning, and trying to get some of the people out that were there when we took it over years and years ago, and all that kind of culminated, and all of a sudden it kind of stopped in 2024. Like in the first quarter, the end of the first quarter through maybe the second quarter of 2024, it seemed to stop. We seemed to kind of gotten ahead of some of the problems, but at the beginning of maybe the third quarter of 24, we started seeing that problem ball spin back around to the spend money side, and that came up just out of the blue. It was a lot of stuff that just was unforeseen. One of the apartments had an extreme water leak. It was really unbelievable. It took a while to find it. We had to hire a company to come in, and I thought they were going to come in with. Remember how you could put the two old wires in your hand, and supposedly if you walked towards the wire, it would separate? They didn't do that. I wanted them to do that. That'd have been fun. They didn't do that. Instead, they came in with this machine that took pictures of the ground and stuff and looked for temperature variations and everything. They actually found 2 leaks underground and then a couple of leaks in the building. Solved everything. The water, I'm not even kidding, the water and sewage on this thing was I don't know. It was like $1,100 at one point. $1,100 for water and sewage. It was incredible. I think this last time after all the work was done, I think it was like $200 for water and sewage. That's the difference. But again, if you look at that, the money had to be spent in order to get this repair work done, and then the money long range will come back. And that's really what it's like when you're into investment property. You have that time where you go through and it just seems like, man, I can't make any money at this. It's just killing me. And then all of a sudden, you've done a few repairs, a lot of repairs, things level out, You start making some money. But this is what I would tell you. When you start making money, if you're going to own old buildings like this, make sure you escrow, and this is what we do, you make sure you escrow a whole bunch of money so that when it comes time for repairs, you're not going to be out. You're not going to be worried about paying the mortgage on the properties because you didn't save that money. I would say in these properties, at a minimum, 30% of rent needs to be withheld for maintenance. I mean, that sounds like a big amount, but I would do 30% for the next 6 months. I would do 30%. I would set behind every month for at least 6 months, then maybe pulled back to about half that at about 15%, but you can leave it at 15%. There's some things that are coming up in these properties. We know of a roof that's going to be really expensive. I mean, I think the least estimate we've gotten was like $12,000 or something for this roof. And it could run higher than that. They could strip it back and find all sorts of wood problems. I've seen roofs like this that get over 20 grand. And so, you definitely want to put money aside. And that goes back to what I was saying in the very beginning. So if you buy the property and you're looking at the property and you're saying, how much money have I put in the properties? You should figure, each building, you should figure probably $3,000 a building right off the bat. If you have 4 buildings, that's $12,000 you need to have set aside for initial repairs and maintenance that's going to come up in the very beginning. I don't care how well they look. The previous owner tells you we haven't had a problem. In fact, that's probably the worst thing. If you have a seller that's telling you, there's not a thing wrong with these buildings, you're the guy that's going to pay the cost. You are the guy that's going to pay the cost if that happens. I'm telling you now, because old buildings always break. So if the guy tells you, look, I haven't had any problem with this building in months, it's your turn. There's another bullet been put in that revolver and it's going to be click bang. That's going to be it. In closing, if you need any advice on this stuff, just let me know. My name is Forrest. You can always reach out, leave a comment below, and I'll get back with you. Thank you for watching.